I'm not even sure what to say to that. My goodness. Hey, McCollum, act like a professional, or at least act like we've done this for almost 200 episodes. What are you doing?
Happy Tuesday. I was trying to shake my drinky drink.
No, you.
My
Oh,
my
I'm not sure. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay, I just got to be honest. I'm not sure what makes me more upset. The fact that you decided to start the episode off by shaking your drink in front of the camera, or the fact that you just said drinky drink
my drinky
as
drink.
a 36-year-old woman. What was that? Oh, and look at that. She also has her giant mug as well.
With my mermaid logo. Talk about, well, it's all scratched because I drop it so many times. I like mermaids. How does this not surprise you? I'm 12.
No, I know you. I know you like mermaids. I'm not concerned with. Again, I think we're missing the point, Deb. The fact that you said drinky drink as an adult. Again, I feel like that's something that children would say, but you don't have kids, so I'm not sure where that came from. Boom. Do you like that?
I
That's how
like
it's done. You don't walk. You don't walk in here shaking your drink at the camera. You act professional. You have a professional segue. Man, sometimes
we never
sometimes
said
I'm surprised I don't have back issues from carrying this bad boy. You know what I mean?
we never said we were professional. So I don't know where you got that idea from.
No, but like, I thought we at least try to pretend. You just came in. You came in hot, just not trying at all.
It feels like
Rough
Friday,
day.
only Tuesday. Yeah.
All
There
right.
needs to be alcohol in this, but it's just caffeine for now.
This is deja vu because the same you made that same joke last week. It's one of those weeks, one of those months.
One of
It
those
seems
weeks. No, today wasn't bad actually. Today was good. Today was a good
okay.
day.
Good, good.
All of my children behaved for the most part, so
It's always a good thing.
I feel like yeah, we'll get into this, and yeah, I feel like I'm a parent to 200 kids a day, but that's just how I feel.
There
So,
you go.
my brain hurts. I don't know how you parents do it, but anyway, on to our segment, I guess, or our episode. That's my segue. You did your segue.
Yes, I did. I
Okay.
did. Trying to clean up this operation. All
Okay.
right. All right, Deb. What are we talking about today? This is actually something that you brought to the table, and
Yeah.
so you want to just give a quick summary of what we're doing today?
We are talking about whether decide to have kids or to not have kids, or if you do have kids, why or why not, or if you don't have kids, don't want kids, why or why not. I feel like as the years go on, it's 2024. I feel like it's just such a different world that we live in than when we were young, and when our parents had us. And it's just interesting already, like the podcast I listen to, the conversations I have with friends who do have kids, with friends who don't want to have kids. It's just interesting to hear the reasons. So I just thought it would be a fun thing to talk about. And I have so many great responses. It's amazing. And let me just start off by saying there's no right or wrong answer. There is you get to do whatever you want to do. And for me personally, I'm like, you do what you want. Like, it's, I'm on the side of, I don't want kids. And anyone who's like
Me too.
regularly to us,
No, I'm kidding.
like, well, there you go. Hey, you can have kids now and still be like, nope, don't have kids. It's fine. I have some responses like that. But
I'm
so
sure.
I'm on, I'm on the side of, I don't want kids, but that doesn't mean I don't think everyone shouldn't have kids. I'm actually like, I'm glad everybody wants kids because I don't want to do it. So the world's got to repopulate somehow. So anyway, the responses were just so interesting. I just like hearing everyone's point of view because I think it's important too for anyone listening to feel heard. And some people just need to feel heard and okay with not wanting kids, or I guess more on the side of not wanting kids because that's a little more, I don't want to say uncommon, but it's a little more like, but how are we gonna, you don't want kids, but then you have people who don't want kids who are like, why would you want kids? It's just an interesting conversation. A lot of responses came through, and I'm really excited to share all of them.
Yeah, for sure. I got some good responses as well. I think they're going to be a lot different than the ones that you got, but you and I also we posted the questions a
Mhm.
little bit differently, kind of in a different way.
Mhm.
And so we got some different responses,
Yeah.
which I think will be good. I think it'll add to the layers of the conversation. But yeah, this is a conversation that you and I have had in
Mhm.
like little snapshots, right? Like
Mhm.
every once in a while, we're talking about a different thing, a different topic, and somehow the kids thing comes up, and then we've spent a minute here, a minute there talking about that you don't want to have kids, or that I do have kids, and despite my joke earlier, I love my kids, and it was something that I've always wanted to do. So we've kind of touched on it a little bit here and there, but we've never fully just dedicated an episode to it. And I think based on some of the responses, I think it's a good call by you to do this topic. So um, I'm glad you brought this to the table. And I'm just going to say this once at the very beginning, because I feel like sometimes when we talk about these things, we tend to go back and forth about, like, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Just so you know, like we've always said with our podcast, that's never our goal, is to judge anybody's life, talk poorly about your decisions or what you will or do or don't want to do. That's not never our goal, but we are going to share our own thoughts towards this. And so I just want to make sure everybody is very clear about that, because I don't want to say this multiple times. Like, I can, if it's your opinion, that's fine. I don't want to do that a million times. I'm going to do one blanket statement so that we don't have to keep saying that, because I feel like it takes away from the conversation sometimes. So just know that anything we say, I'm just going to be very blunt. I don't care what you do. That's pretty much it for me. I really don't. Like, among the things that I have to worry about in my life, what someone else I don't know does with their own life, I could not care any less.
Yeah.
So if that gives you any comfort or peace, just know if I say anything, probably not talking about you or any decisions you make. So that's for the YouTube crowd too. If we cut any of these clips, I don't want to hear it from you clowns. So you can chime in, but I'm not going to care. So, because at the end of the day, like we've always said, we're not experts on this stuff. We bring these things to the table so that people can have conversations. Maybe these are things that you talk amongst your own friends and family about. Maybe it's just something for you to think about. Maybe you don't care about this topic at all. Whatever place you land on is great. We're fine with that. But like we've always said, the goal is not to try to educate you on anything, or I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you why you should have kids or why you should not. Could not care any less what you decide to do. So just want to make that, like I said, I just felt the need to say that up front, because I don't want to keep going back and forth, like trying to justify stuff we say. You know what I mean?
Do we have haters? Like,
I feel like
here,
it happens every once in a while. It happens every once in a while.
we gotta defend ourselves now.
Yeah,
No,
some
I
random
agree.
some random person without a picture for their profile. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe
Yeah.
you go back to just playing video games all day, whatever you do. This podcast is not for you. And I guess, trust me, we're entering October. Today's October 1st. We're entering Halloween season. We're probably going to say something about candy corn, and then someone's going to get mad again. I don't know why these people are defending candy corn.
There's always people who will be offended at anything or looking to be offended. So there you go. So
100%. So anyways, I know that's not really our group. The people that listen to this podcast aren't in that group, but I just wanted to mention that, like,
yeah.
you know, like I said, these are just our thoughts towards for our own life. And,
Mhm.
it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I know, I agree. We're not judging, and I'm certainly not going to tell someone how to live their life at all. And I frankly like hearing the other side of why people do want kids, because I got tremendous, like, good, like, explanations for both sides that I thought
Sure.
are just important for anyone to hear. So basically, the goal of talking about this is I hope that whoever's listening it will help them, because I know that when I first listened to a podcast, well, I think it was Crystal Rose. I don't know if it's Crystal Rose and then Girls Gotta Eat. They talk about it too. They talk about, choosing to not have kids. It, for me, finally it clicked, and I'm like, oh, it's not just me. Like, it just kind of gave me, like, okay, like, it helped me to not judge myself, and, like, gave me permission. So I feel like anyone listening to this on either side, like, maybe maybe someone's telling them not to have kids and they're like, but I want kids, like, if someone's trying to talk you into doing something, like, don't, you need to do what you want to do. So I just think it's interesting to hear both sides of this.
Yeah. And I figured you and I would talk about this a little bit, and then we'll jump into some of the listener responses that we received. I figured we would talk a little bit about just the topic in general. And yeah, I think that's what, for me, that's always a weird thing. And I'll be honest, I don't have too many of these conversations with people that I actually know. I've heard these conversations happen. You obviously see stuff online. You and I have talked about this a little bit. I think when it comes to this topic, where it starts getting weird is when a person on either side of the line has a really strong opinion about someone else's decision
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any sense to me, because
Mm-hmm.
it really doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It does.
Now I understand, like with family and things like that, there's a little bit of a difference there, you know, and the involvement in someone's life with their family is a little bit different. But like just random people saying, you know, when someone's on their high horse saying, well, this is, you should have kids for X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, first of all, I wasn't asking for your opinion. Thank you. Second of all, we're in different mindset, different space, different lives. So you can say all you want, but at the end of the day, it really does have to be that person's decision to
Mm-hmm.
have kids. On the flip side, I have seen some people that seem to be on their high horse about not having kids, and they almost want to point out to like why having kids is dumb. To that I say, again, like I said before, don't care what you say, because it
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't matter. Like it's one of those things, like you've made your decision. That's great. So part of you making that decision is you're free from having any responsibility of kids in general. So why would you waste your time worrying about what other people are doing with their kids? Because like it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And so I think it's the minority. I think you've seen people on both sides that have pretty strong opinions. And to that I say, just mind your own business, because I think it doesn't matter. And I think that's the only time this conversation gets a little bit weird, is when people have really strong opinions towards
Mm-hmm.
it, and they start getting involved in people's lives. Like I think this seems silly to me, but and so you know, go ahead. I think you're gonna say something, but I don't know if that's been your experience.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, when I agree, like when someone does that and is trying to, like, start to, they say what they believe and then they start to say why, why you should do it too, or why you shouldn't, or whatever. I feel like it's them convincing themselves that their
Sure,
choice is correct,
sure,
which we all need to. I mean, we kind of do that in our heads, so, a lot of the time, but
should
it
stay
is,
there.
I would never, I mean, I of course, when I talk about it with people, or with friends, it's not like I talk about it every day, but when it does come up, or when
You're asking your
oh,
students. You have these kids doing push-ups. Like, hey, what do you think about this? It's like 55.
right? But like, I just say I don't want them, and that's it. And then they'll ask me why, and I'll say why, and but I don't go off into a tangent of, well, why do you want kids? Well, why? That's dumb. Like, like it's not. I'm like I said, I always say I'm grateful that people want to have kids because do it. Like that's, I love it. Like I love my nephew. I'm so glad he's here, like was born. I'm glad my sister wanted a kid. Like I'm glad that people want kids. I just don't want one. so,
Sure.
so it is funny when people try to convince the other side, but I also think it's interesting to hear from both sides, because again, it's just a different, it's just a different world that we live in these days, with the choice, the choices that women want to make. And honestly, in my personal experience with my dating life, I've over the past couple of years, I've never ran into more men that want kids. And of course, I'm the problem in the situation, and I'm like, nope, sorry. You're gonna have to find someone who wants
Sure.
kids. So it's so fun. I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually, which was, it's perfect timing. Um, there's some statistic out there that these days, in terms of like single men and women who don't have kids, the men want kids and the women don't. And that's not to say everybody. It's just, it's like more so. I forget the percentage. I'm sorry. I can't even quote what study it was. I'm not making it. I just heard it and it just clicked with me. Like, that's interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just interesting the way the world has shifted since like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and so forth, and to today. And to be honest, the state of our um like just how expensive things are, and just the economy, I think that
Mm-hmm.
plays a big role in it as well. So anyway, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
No, it is. And I'm gonna say, you know, it's funny. I feel like I'm coming in hot today. I had a great day. There's no, I'm not even upset. This has been a really good day.
I was gonna say, who
Um,
pissed you off today?
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I feel great. That's the weird thing. Um, but I will say this, and this will be, I said I was going to judge. This will be judgmental, but for some of you guys who want kids, like let's be honest. And I'm not speaking. I don't know Deb's dating situation, but some of you guys need to grow up before you even consider that. Like some of you dudes need to think about that part of it first before you even consider taking on that responsibility. Just being completely honest. Like I've seen some people, I'm like, you should probably not have kids for a while. Not saying you should never do it, but you need to get some stuff together first. Like you probably need to make that step from being a child to an adult first and actually being a grown man. Just my own thoughts. again, I'm not talking to any listeners on here. I think that all these guys that listen to this podcast, I think are responsible men who handle their business, whether they have kids or not. But like some of these guys I see, I'm like, you probably should hold off until you figure some things out. And to be honest with you, I've also seen some dads out there that you guys also need to grow up and kind of become, uh, there shouldn't be an extra grown child in your family. There should be two parents and then however many kids you have. But I've seen some families where it's like, you're a grown child and you need to kind of man up. So
I he said it, not me. So there you go. I don't have to
it's
say
just
anything.
it's the truth though. It's an unfortunate truth. And the cool thing is, I'll say this: a lot of again, I believe a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, like I said, whether they have kids or not, are not in that group. I believe that whoever I'm talking to, that's not you. I think of a dude like one of our good friends of the podcast, Paul Marshall. Paul Marshall. You see all the stuff that he does with his daughters, the relationship they have, the way he loves them. Like that's a good dude, a good responsible dude who's handling his business and is building an amazing relationship with his family. A lot of respect to you, Paul. Obviously Nick, dadding greatly, it's in his handle, dadding greatly, and you see the stuff he does with his family, and he talked on our episode about counseling and all these different things. um, I look at my brother Jordan. He doesn't have kids, but the way he's responsible and handles his business as an adult, one day if he chooses to have kids, he'll be an amazing dad. I know for that for a fact. So most likely I'm not talking to anybody who listens to this podcast. Now, if you know anybody that's in that boat, feel free to share this with them and let them know that they should start listening to our podcast. And that's not to say that I'm perfect by any means, but like, as you know, Deb, there's some guys that are just clowns, and it's like you haven't taken that step to grow up, and doesn't matter what your age is, it's just it hasn't happened. So, which is a big part of, I mean, coming from the parent side of things, uh, that's a you have to you are the adult in that relationship, and so it's like you when you have kids, you're making a very big decision, a life altering decision. And it's not just changing your life, it's also changing the lives of the kids or kid that you're bringing into this world. It's changing the life of your significant other or spouse who you're in this thing with. It changes a lot of people. So I think sometimes people look at this once they have kids, whether it was unexpected or whether they made the decision just really quickly.
Yeah.
I think you really need to understand this decision that you're making. My wife and I had a lot of conversations about this. We knew we both wanted kids, and we knew that was something that we wanted to do, and we wanted to build a family. But it wasn't like, well, we're gonna have kids, so we're just gonna do it, and so we're just gonna have kids. Like there was a lot of thought that went into it, and there was a lot of things where it's like, you know what, this is gonna change, that's gonna change, and we had those conversations. And I'm not saying everybody should do that, but I think it is a wise thing to do, because I think some people have this fantasy. It's like, oh, kids, and you just build this family. It's a lot of work, and it's worth it. It's 100% worth it if you choose to do that, but it is a lot of work. And I've seen some people absolutely crumble under the pressure of it. And it's like, and it's not like this relents. It's like, it's not like there's certain things that get easier as the kids grow up, but it shifts. It's not like it gets better and it goes away, right? Like you leave the diaper changing stage, but guess what? They need your attention and your focus and your love in a different area. And then they grow out of that stage, and then it's like, so it's never like, oh, things are just easy now. Just the responsibility and the pressure and the challenge just shifts and changes. So if you're not ready for it, if you're not really on board, then talk to Deb and have her explain all the reasons why she doesn't want to have kids, because that might be a better road, because it's challenging. You know what I mean? And like you said, like, and that's the thing too, like when if there's people out there that are pressuring people to have kids, like you need to be a good friend or a family member. And this might sound harsh, but you need to look at that person and think, am I pressuring the right person into having kids? Like, would it be wise for this person to bring people into the world? Because like I said, maybe not yet, maybe down the road, 5, 10 years, maybe they can do it. But like for some of these people, like there's some people I'm like, I don't know if you should have kids right now, because I don't think you're ready for it. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
again, it's all very harsh. I apologize, but that's what we're talking about today. So
I don't think anybody should be pressuring anybody to have kids.
no, I
Like,
agree. I
I
agree.
think that's wild. I think even if you look at someone like a couple, let's say they've been married for a few years, let's say they're in their 30s, like let's say they're just like responsible, they own it, they have no debt. Just think of not perfect, but just like a situation to where you're like, yeah, this is perfect timing. They have the money, they have the family support, whatever. you still should not pressure anybody to have kids, because that doesn't, at the end of the day, all that doesn't matter. Because, on the flip side, you could have someone, a single parent who's broke, who like has in all these crazy situations that they didn't ask for, and they can do a great job raising a kid. It doesn't matter. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't, like, and then on the flip side, you could have someone who is in a near perfect, I say it with air quotes, situation.
Hmm.
They're gonna do a crappy job. Who knows? I don't know. All I know is that there's a lot of kids in foster care
Sure.
for
Yeah.
many different reasons, right? I see it at my school. I see it firsthand. I see, we've had to make CPS report. Like, it's just, this goes, without saying, like, there's just of course, a lot of people in this world who should not have been parents, for sure. But anyway, for me, all I know is that I babysat my nephew a few times when he was a baby, and had him over again, up until, a few months ago. He's 4 now. And all I have to say is I'm not used to having kids around constantly, obviously. Like, when I'm at
Hmm.
home, I can't even, like, in the morning, I could barely put like my mascara on. Like, the things that I'm used to, it's like, forget it. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so I see firsthand that my sister doesn't have time to like do anything. And I'm like, how do you shower? Like, when do you shower? Like, so obviously those are very surface level reasons for me to not have kids. And I know I don't need to explain myself to anybody, but just simple things like that. Like, I'm like, I won't have any alone time. And like, my alone time is important to me. So like, I see how I saw a tiny little sliver of like how much work it is, especially when they're little, even with two adults in the room. It's like, you turn away for 2 seconds and you turn, you're like, oh crap, how did he get scissors in his hands? Like it's
Right.
just like, you're just,
Yeah.
it's, so and it's not that I don't think I'll be a good mom. A lot of people have asked me that, like, oh, but you'd be such a good mom. And I'm like, I know I'll be I don't, that's not the reason why I don't want kids. I don't think I'll be a crappy mom.
Yeah.
I'm with kids every day, all day long, hundreds of them, in teenage form, right? The older ones. And I love my nephew, and I feel like I, do a good job interacting with him and helping take care of him. I changed his diapers. I fed him when he was a preemie. I stayed over and didn't sleep one night. So like, I feel like I will be a good mom. It's not that, it's just that, it's for the simple fact that I don't want to do all of that. I just don't. And I like traveling, and I like doing, and that people will come back anytime I, explain myself to somebody. And if they ask, I'll say it. Like, I won't take offense to it. And I don't, no one can change my mind but me. But then people will come back, well, you can travel with kids. And I say, I don't want to. Well, you can do this with a kid. I don't want to. So it's like, it's not that I don't
Yeah.
think I can, it's that just that I don't want to.
That's it. First of all, I don't know who said that, so all due respect to them. That's an oversimplification, and that's not a one size fits all
Right.
mentality. I'll say that for sure. So
It's
like
just,
that, you can
well,
travel with them. Yeah, but the smoothness of that trip will be very different depending on your situation. Um,
mm,
but and so I did want, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I feel like this is the one question I've not asked you because I didn't feel like it was never any of my business. I've never asked this off air. I've never wanted to. I probably still wouldn't ask this question, but we are talking about it, so I do think it's important. Um, so just very clearly, like, so what is your reasoning for not having kids? Because you touched on it a little bit, but like when someone says, "Hey, why don't you want to have kids?" Because I do, I have some thoughts about. I would have some guesses, but what is your main reason for not having kids or not
I
wanting kids?
I see how much work it is, and I just don't want to do it. I
Yeah.
don't want to lose. I see how little sleep my friends get. And of course, again, they're like, but it's such a reward. Like, I hear all of the, like, oh, but don't you want a little mini you? And to be honest, at the end of the
Oh man,
day,
that kid would be nuts.
what?
That kid would be nuts. A mini Deb running around.
Right?
There's
Crazy.
a mini mermaid. Jeez,
Yeah. Right. Little Mermaid.
it's like
And
wild red hair.
I don't know what it is sometimes, but I just, that maternal instinct isn't there to like want to like be pregnant and want to like go through the mom phase of holding the baby. And like, I don't know if this resonates with any moms out there, some of you, like I have friends who are like, oh my God, like not that they loved being pregnant. I've heard it was very uncomfortable, but like they just enjoyed that part of like, being connected to their
Hmm.
baby.
Sure.
Sounds great, but there's just, it's like, there's not, it goes over my head. Just, there's does nothing for me. So I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't want them. And of course, and there's the aspect of who, who I don't know who I'd want to have a kid with, like the partner part of it as well.
Yeah.
Don't want a kid bad enough if we're going that route, right? If we're going that excuse of like I don't have a partner that I trust. Oh, there's like you could artificial insemination, IVF. I'm like, yeah, I don't want a kid that bad. Like, if
Sure.
I'm going that route, if I'm ever leaning towards maybe, like absolutely not. Like that's so two parents is a lot of work, let alone one.
Sure.
So plain and simple. And I always feel like people judge me when I say this, but I'm to the point where I'm like, I don't care. I like my sleep. I like spending my money the way I want to spend it. I like traveling. I like being able to get up and go and do whatever I want to do. Um, my dog is enough responsibility for me and enough where I work around her schedule already, even though she's just a dog. So that's good enough for me. And I can't imagine doing that with a kid. I just don't want to do
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that's, I think to put it simply, my guess would have been, because this is something that I feel like, especially since we've started Connectable, and I
it.
would say specifically over the last like year and a half, I think one of the words other than evolution or evolving that you've mentioned is freedom. I feel like you've mentioned freedom a lot in different things that you've shared and talked about. And that is the overarching theme that is completely impacted by
Mhm.
having kids.
Yeah.
You can still do things like I still podcast, we still do stuff. There's still things that I'm pursuing, but it all revolves around the family.
Mhm.
I've even told you, I mean, you and I have kind of scheduled podcasting since I've had kids, so it's nothing new. But like a lot of times when you reach out, say, "Hey, can we record at this time instead of this time?" Typically, my first response is, "Yeah, let me check with my wife. Let me check with the family schedule. Let me see what we've got going on to make sure that it works." It's just a natural thing that has to happen, and obviously, I don't look at it as a lack of freedom on my part, but it changes. You don't have the unhindered freedom that you do now. And for some people, and to be honest with you, and I don't know if you agree with this, but because you're in the situation, but I think if you have the mindset and kind of the heart of I'm not interested in having kids,
Mhm.
the older you get, the more that you live in that freedom that you have, I think the more difficult the idea of having kids is. Like to even get your mind to that place, you think of how much life would change, and especially as we're getting older, it's a much more difficult thing to wrap your mind around. I think, at least I imagine it would be, because you've already had so many years of freedom. You have a good job, you have your side business, you're doing well, you're traveling. Like you said, all the things that you said, you're able to do those things, and just imagine doing that with someone like
Mhm.
an adult who's a little bit more difficult to travel with. Do you know how
Mhm.
annoying that would be for you? It'd be incredibly annoying. That's a full grown adult that can take care of themselves. Now you shrink them down and you have someone that's completely relying on you. It would be really challenging. And so, I feel like that the freedom aspect of it, sometimes people don't understand, and then you hear people complain, it's like, oh, I can't do this or that anymore. It's like, well, yeah, that's kind of what you signed up for. I don't know what to tell you. Like, probably should have thought of that before you went down that road. But um, so, anyways, all that to say is my guess would have been just simple freedom is
Yeah.
impacted by it.
Yeah, of course. And then what you described right there towards the end with like just, like you said, like you get to travel, you got a side hustle, you like things are like you get to have freedom. I do have a couple of single gal friends who are exactly in that type situation, but they want kids, so they are looking into, IVF or IUI or whatever. But so, just because you're in that situation doesn't mean that like, and you have freedom doesn't mean that you still don't want one. So I have friends, like I see it firsthand and I'm like, I don't they want a kid so bad and I want them to have one. Like I'm always talking to them about, okay, where are you have you talked to your doctor? Da, da, da. Like I encourage them to do that. And I look at myself and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So, and every once in a while, and I'm like, is there something wrong with me? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't want to. And I think, and my friends actually will come back and tell me, they're like, Deb, no, that's good. If you don't want a kid, don't have. There's too many people who don't want a kid and they have it anyway. And it's like, why not? I mean, like, just don't if you don't want to. You
Yeah.
know, there's a lot of people. You know, we already said this at the beginning. Anyone who's listening can probably think of at least one person. There's a lot of people who shouldn't have kids. And again, I don't think I'd be a terrible mom. I just don't want to do it. And so I feel like that would be, if I force myself to do it, it would be a very like resentful thing in my
Yeah.
life. And then, I'm just like, So, but on the flip side, I've always told myself if something were to accidentally happen, then I'm just going to have it and I'll figure it out. So like, I've always told myself that too. So I'm like, well, I'm open to, so there's that. So it's not like,
Yeah, I'm gonna have the thing.
but if I'll figure it out. It's my whole life anyway.
Yeah.
But if I'm choosing, if I'm being proactive, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, but the freedom for sure. And I don't want a kid. I don't want a kid bad enough to where my single friends will go through the single mom life, which they want to do it. And I think they should do it. Yeah, because there are, women who are single and like in their 30s or maybe even early 40s who are very successful, but they're like, there's still something missing and they want a kid and they should try for it. I don't have that feeling. I don't have that. There's something missing feeling. And
Yeah.
so that's another, I guess, reason or explanation, I guess, for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
And that makes a ton of sense. And like I'm not gonna say it again, the whole thing again, but like I said, I've always respected that about you, that you've made that decision, because I think more people would benefit from, not forcing the issue,
Mhm.
if their heart's not fully in it, or if it's not something they want to do. Um, not feeling that pressure from the outside influences is a good thing for sure. Um, I know we've got a bunch of responses that we got to get to, but I did have one more question for you. And if this is inaccurate, please correct me. So two thoughts. There are two bigger thoughts, but we'll try to keep it short. Um, I feel like in the past you've mentioned that if someone you were dating
Mhm.
already had kids, you would be okay with that. Maybe
Yeah.
not ideal, but you'd be okay with that. To me, that seems like that would still be a huge challenge, probably for a lot of other reasons. But is that still your mindset?
Yeah, because I'm not their mom.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not gonna impede or impose myself on that. If they're co-parenting or even if they're single parent life, like I'm just dating you and you parent, and I'm gonna stand over here. I'm not gonna try to parent. But if things were to get serious, like honestly, I'm over here like I'm just the fun stepmom. That's my role. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that
I don't
part
know
of
if
it,
that's
that part of it makes sense. But I was thinking more specifically, like what we just talked about with the freedom, because like that's
Oh, I
still going to
see.
impact the freedom side of things. But you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because like I have no doubt, like as far as the relationship, I'm sure you'd get along great with a kid. Just based on your personality, I was pretty confident that you wouldn't be trying to jump in there. I was like, I'm Mama Deb, that
Yeah.
just that never even crossed my mind. But I was thinking more specifically what we just talked about as far as the freedom, because I don't know if there's not, especially depending on the age, there's not really
Mhm.
a way around that. Like that's going to be a part of it. And now it
Yeah.
may not be the same as if you were the actual
Mhm.
biological mom, but
Yeah.
like that's I guess what's going to happen is there's going to be some, I guess, a lack of freedom on the
Mhm.
guy's side, right? Because he is attached to that kid, and depending on how that whole split works, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense? Like, how
Oh,
would,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
I
mumbling
think
at this point. You get the question, run with it.
yeah, yeah. I haven't really been in a situation to where I'm dating or seriously dating a guy with young kids, if that makes sense, to where it's like taking up a lot of time. I have dated guys who have older kids, so it's a little easier, like they're older or they're grown or whatever. So it's like,
Kids trying to hit on you.
what?
The kids trying to hit on you.
Who are you dating, the son or the dad? I don't know. So,
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so
My
you're not.
my immature joke.
Yeah, so that's come up as well, but I haven't. I just haven't been, I guess I haven't been in a situation to where like that's been a serious
Sure.
thing to where it's impacted
Sure.
me. But yeah, no, that's a good question. But I've always said if they have kids, like that's not a deal breaker for me, but
Right.
like what you just pointed out, the freedom. So it was always like, a we'll see how it goes, see what
Yeah, that makes
happens.
sense. Yeah, no,
Type
I'm
thing.
I'm not looking for a
Yeah,
concrete answer. I was just curious.
yeah.
Um, and then, as so, last thing before we jump into our listener responses, do you feel like I feel like you kind of alluded to this earlier because you did mention that a lot of guys, single guys, really want kids.
Mhm.
Has that been an issue
Yeah,
in your dating
oh yeah.
life? These questions feel very strange. I never ask you these questions.
He
I
doesn't
feel like I'm in like a section of the store that I'm not normally.
feel like
You know
you're
what
the
I mean?
guest. Yeah, no,
I
yeah.
feel like I'm being very intrusive. Like I'm like your neighbor looking through the fence. Like, what is Deb doing over there?
Yeah, it's definitely been deal breakers on like first dates. It's been deal breakers in a relationship I had last year that lasted for a few months. Um, it's been so in the early stages of when I am like, let's say I'm online dating, I kind of ask early on, and they kind of do too now. And I don't know if it's because more women don't want kids, so they got to ask. I do ask that question sometimes now before like I meet them, like or I have in the past, because I don't. I'm like I don't want to waste your time. This is just like I'm trying to be respectful,
Sure,
but, and it's such like an odd. It's like it's almost like rush. Throwing like you don't get married, you want to have kids, like you don't like what like let's get to know each other first, but the kids part, no, right, the kids part is a thing. It's like I need to let you know, but right up front, like this is the situation, because that has been a, oh, this is not going to work out then
yeah, right.
type deal. And I'm like, hey, I get it, like go go, you do need to find someone who wants kids, like that's not fair. So
Well,
yeah.
especially at, I mean, I hate to keep aging us. We're not old, but we're getting there. But like, especially at our age, right? Like that's a little bit more of a serious conversation because you are starting to enter that where becoming a parent at this age specifically does it like things start changing a little bit, right? Like even the idea of you look at if you have a kid right now, how old you'll be when they graduate high school, like all that stuff starts changing and it
Mhm.
does play a factor and whether or not you have kids and then what your life's going to look like moving forward. So I imagine that yeah, at this specific age that it probably is a little bit more urgent question for some people.
Yeah, for sure. So it's always an interesting life being single at my age, and I don't want kids. it's it's just interesting. But I'm also content by myself. I'm content not having kids, so it just, it is the way it is. So
Yeah.
it's all, yeah.
See, I don't know, maybe I'm just naive to the whole dating thing, but it seems it is, I don't know, I guess it doesn't seem like it would be that much of a shock, but again I'm not in that position. So I just feel like that, like you've said it's 2024, it seems like that's a more common theme for people that they don't want to have kids. And I guess it doesn't surprise me when that's said, but I don't know, maybe I'm an anomaly. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm, like I said, I'm naive.
Well, let's see what everyone else is saying.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. So if you guys don't follow us on Instagram specifically, we kind of Deb put a question out there. I put three questions. We basically asked the same thing. I asked, I put out a poll first to say, hey, do you have kids? And the result of that, which I kind of figured this would be the case for our audience, but it was 80% yes, have kids, 20% did not,
Okay.
which was, I kind of figured. I feel like that's kind of our audience, I think, is kind of in that boat. I think a
Yeah.
lot of them are parents, a lot of them have kids.
Yeah.
So that wasn't necessarily surprising. Um, but then I also asked, if you don't have kids, do you want them one day? Why or why not? That's a question that Deb asked me to put out there. And then I also just tacked this on because sometimes I feel like when we have this conversation, we only look at it from the perspective of um, why it's okay to choose not to have kids, right? But I think there's also a whole nother side of people that are really excited about having
Mhm.
kids. And so I wanted to make sure they had an opportunity as well to kind of get their thoughts out there. So the other question I asked was, what if you have kids, what's your favorite part of being a parent or having kids,
Yeah.
basically? So you asked a very similar question. You just did it
Yes.
in a condensed version.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know how I don't know how you want to do this. I only have one response for someone who doesn't have kids and why, or if they want them one day. I only have one response there.
Okay. I mean, I have a plethora. I mean,
I have a ton for the favorite part of having kids. I have a ton there.
okay. I mean, do you want to go back and forth, or do you want to read all
Well,
yours and I read all mine, or how do
so
we?
let's do this. Let me just give you the one that I have for if you don't have kids, do you want them one day and why or why not? I'll
Okay.
just give you my one response, and if you have a bunch of them, you can toss those out there.
Yeah.
So the one that I have is actually for my brother Jordan, and he said depends on my mood that day as to whether or not he wants them one day. Um, Obviously, if you know my brother, he's being partially serious. He's also he's a jokester. He loves to joke around. Um, but yeah, I think in all seriousness, though, I think that's probably the case for a lot of people, especially at a certain age. I'm sure he's saying that a little bit jokingly, but I think it's like there's some days where you're probably like, this would be awesome. And then other days you're on the airplane and you see the screaming baby, probably not super psyched about the idea of having kids, right? Um, or you see someone who's pulling their hair out because they're having a stressful day with the four kids that are theirs. So, and then other days you see you're at the park, you see families having an amazing time, laughing, all these different things. Um, so I'm sure it's not an uncommon thought that it kind of depends on the mood that day, whether or not you want them. But I will say, and I kind of already said this a little bit, uh, and this is the cool thing about I'm saying this because Jordan submitted this one, but I can speak to all of my siblings. I have two younger brothers and a younger sister, none of which have kids, but they will all be amazing parents if they choose to go down that road. And they're amazing aunts and uncles. I see how they are with my kids, and they're incredible. And so, Jordan, whether or not you decide to have kids one day or not, whether or not your mood is pushing you in that direction, uh, you will be an amazing dad. 100%. I have no doubt. And I would never say that he knows this. I would not say this if I didn't mean it. I would probably say, maybe you don't need to have kids, Jordan. Maybe skip that part. Maybe you're just an uncle. Maybe you're a fun uncle. But I say that because
He's
I mean it. He would be, what's that?
he's a funkle.
A funkle. We used to
Yeah.
call my brother Justin a hunkle. We got a T-shirt, like a tank top that said that. He wasn't thrilled, but yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to say that to him. He may not believe that, but like he would be an amazing dad one day if he chooses to do that. So, um, but again, like I said, I think there's a lot of people that it probably does depend on the day. There's probably days they go back and forth. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so that's the one response I got for that one.
I mean, I so my question on Instagram says kids or no kids, and it said I would also like to know why. I mean, I have so many responses. I mean, I have a few of them like paragraph responses that I want to read because it's very interesting and the perspective is good. And then I have a few short answers. Do you want me to just do you one at a time or go through all of them? Do you want to go through all yours and then I go through all mine? Because I just have a bunch. There are some that I could just rapid fire get through really quickly. Just, oops, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. This is. Are you on mute? It's like,
I'm on mute. I'm like, she keeps
I'm
pointing. She's
like
not answering. I thought
I'm
we
like I see
froze.
my mouth moving. I was like,
I was drinking this, and I didn't want this new thing that we use. You can hear the gulps. So I'm like, I'm gonna try not to do that. So yes, I'm sorry. I was muted, everybody. I'm not sure if they'll be able to hear that or not. So Deb definitely couldn't.
I
Look at this. I
couldn't.
made fun of Deb for not being a professional. Look at me. Now
Yep.
I'm falling flat on my face at 45 minutes in. Can you
Mm-hmm.
hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Do you want me to run through mine
Yeah, run through
first?
yours, and then I'll just run through all mine because mine are. I'm not going to have a category of no, I want kids, and this is why not, or yes. I'm just going to read them in random order.
Okay, perfect. So this, like I said, this one is in response to the question of what's your favorite part of having kids. So this is
Mhm.
from the people that have kids currently. So this is from Nick, aka Dadding Greatly. He said, it's like the longest, most arduous project you've ever been a part of. So watching it grow and develop and succeed, the good parts, you stand back and just think, F yeah, I did that. I helped grow that and mold it. And then for me, I have a little baseball, fishing, and golf buddy. And my daughter is adorable and makes me laugh and does things that put me in awe. And hopefully they just love you so much and add love and humor to your home. So that's from Nick. Uh, Drew Henson said, so many good parts, probably the stories they tell and the funny things they do, which I'm 100% for that. Like our daughters say some of the funniest things that just catch you off guard. And it is one of the most fun parts about the whole thing. I've told my daughter some jokes. There's some jokes I've told her. It's like this. You only tell your uncles this because if you tell this anywhere else, you might get in trouble. But they're more than happy to share those types of jokes. So it's the funny things they say. Absolutely. Um, Danny Garcia, a previous guest on the show, she said raising future ancestors, which, like we talked about before, like you are like continuing or creating a line of human beings to continue on that lineage. So it's a big part of it. Doesn't mean that you should feel responsible for doing that. There's plenty of people that can uh, take that burden, but as a big part of it, and that's a cool part about that idea is like the person that you're raising right now is continuing on with a generation, and hopefully one that's a positive family line. You know what I mean? So that was good. Someone I'm not familiar with this person. I don't know if this is a friend of yours or a random listener, but Jonelle, Jonelle, said watching them grow and become independent, making good choices, which I think is awesome. And then we have one from our friend and previous guest, Kimberly Daya, and she said, aside from the obvious reasons, the love being so deep and profound, like nothing else, parenting kids teaches you and strengthens you like nothing else. In my opinion, nothing compares. And then this is actually something she added on later. I know I'm probably because she was asking, Kimberly was asking, she's like, I don't know what this topic is specifically, but I'm really excited to listen. So we kind of chatted about that. And so she added on, she said, I know I'm probably incredibly biased, but I think being a mother is the best thing I've ever done. My kids are my greatest work. I would not be half the person I am had it not been for them. The way parenting challenges you to be your best self is truly unmatched. It is the biggest lesson in patience, selflessness, faith, love, and I could go on. That said, I know it's not for everyone, and if you don't want kids or are not ready for kids, then I highly advise people not to have them. Although sometimes life or God hands us experiences we're not necessarily prepared for, but it's a rare person who would say that they regret having their children. Okay, that's all. That's what she said. That's how she finished it up.
I love that response.
Yeah, it's
Hats
great.
off. That was Kimberly.
That was Kimberly. Yep.
God,
Shout out to
that was a great
Kimberly.
response. Well, because I felt what she was feeling when I want to comment on this really quick.
Now
Like
Deb
that,
wants to have a kid.
huh?
Now Deb wants to have a kid. You
No,
convinced her, Kimberly. You convinced
totally
her.
not.
Yeah.
No, that made my heart melt. Like the way
Yeah.
she was like, they're my greatest joy. Like just the way, that was like so sweet. Like and I believe her and I
Hmm.
love that. But then I like how she added, but if you don't want them, don't have them. Like she kind of added on to it. I feel like she kind of was like, but that's not, if you don't want that, you don't need that to be fulfilled, which is what sometimes I feel like some people, what I've heard personally in my life when people are like, "But why don't you a kid? Why don't you want kids? It makes you so fulfilled." I'm like, so I'm not fulfilled if I don't have kids. So like, I like how Kimberly added like, "But if you don't want them, don't have them." But here's my experience. Like, it's been great. So I love how she kind of did, both sides and gave listeners, a chance to hear the good and the, but don't worry it's not a big, if you don't want them, it's not a big deal. So that was
Yeah.
a great response. I love it.
Yeah. So, I agree. And you could tell that she's really passionate about being a mom, which
Yeah.
is an indicator that she's doing what she's supposed to be doing and having kids was right for her. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think this is probably obvious at this point, but I also appreciate that not only did she give the other side of it, but she said she highly advises people not to have them. It's like, because again, I think it's important. Like she's not just saying, if you don't want to, you shouldn't. She's like, I mean, she's really, I think it shows her seriousness in that by saying, I highly advise you not to if your heart's not in it, which I think that's important.
No, that's
Like
great.
I've said
Yep.
that a couple of times. She said it much kinder than I said it, but you know, she's a nicer person than I am.
Well,
So
because she knows the hard work that goes into it.
you're right. Right.
Yeah. So
So those are, yeah. So shout out to everybody, all the parents who chimed in. We appreciate it. A lot of good answers, and the cool thing was all those answers were very different too.
yeah.
Um,
Good.
So
Okay.
yeah, and some new, like I said, some new voices in there. I got Drew. I don't think you've been uh, in the comments before. Jonelle, like I said, dude, I don't know you, but I appreciate you responding. And so, yeah, it was cool to see some new faces in there as well. So thank you to everybody, all the parents who decided to chime in.
Love
Now,
it.
Deb, you're up.
Okay, I'm gonna say my longer responses first, and then I'll end with like the short ones, just to kind of go through them quickly at the end. I got a variety of answers. I'm keeping my people anonymous. Some have asked to be anonymous, so I'm just keeping everybody anonymous. So
Okay.
I'm just say this, and hopefully I don't slip up and say someone's name. Although I don't think it'll be a big deal, but
Yeah, please don't do that because I will edit it out for you, but I would prefer not to.
I won't. Okay, so I'll just start by saying someone said. So here's one response. And again, my question was, what did I say on Instagram? Kids or no kids, or would you have? Yeah, I just said kids or no kids, meaning have kids or don't have kids. Advice to people and whatever. Someone said, hell yes. Just be prepared to have a tremendous financial strain, tons of sleepless nights, and you will never be worry free again. And make sure you're not an alcoholic because you'll definitely need to drink. So there's one. Here's the first one I'm going to read.
That's funny.
And again, these are people's personal, just what they are going through or went through. So I think it's important for everyone to hear because someone out there might be feeling the same way. So anyway, so there's one response.
That's good.
Another one is yes to kids because they want to like instill I try to say why. So some of them said why and some of them didn't. So someone said yes because they want to instill something into someone and they think it would be joyous.
Hmm.
This
That's
person
interesting.
has this person has so much fun with their nephew, watching him grow and learn things, and yes, very much that person wants to feel that. So
Yeah, I like that.
that's someone who doesn't have kids yet but wants kids.
Okay.
Um, and then, sorry, I gotta like, they're in my phone in different text messages and apps. So okay, here are
Can I?
some long ones. I'll try to read
Yeah.
through them quickly. Um, Someone saying, I'm, I never felt, and this was someone who does have kids, I never felt I was in an economical spot where I could give my kids my time and pay for experiences. I love my kids, but I never wanted them, which sounds harsh, I know. And this person, I know them personally, and they're an amazing parent. I just have to add that.
So that's
Um,
funny. I didn't take it that way.
okay. I don't know. I feel like some people are like, what? You don't want your kids? Like,
Hey,
just, I
we've
don't
already
know.
addressed those people at the beginning.
I know.
Hey,
Okay.
rewind to like minute 5, and you're gonna think less of me, but you'll think more of the person who commented. So it's fine. But no, I
Yeah.
get what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I'm kind of being silly, but like I understand what's because here's the thing. If we can't handle that, then everybody again needs to grow up because like that is a reality of life,
Yeah.
right? Like there's some people that they're in that situation not because they planned it or intended for it to happen, but it just happened by different life circumstances, right?
Right.
But again,
Yeah.
like that doesn't change the fact that we know, I have no doubt, especially if you know this person loves their kids. So if anybody, chill out, you relax on this person, you're
Sure.
fine.
Okay. Well, this person continues to say,
So I hate my kids. Like, oh, I defended you for no reason.
right? No, they're saying, they love their kids, but never like wanted,
Sure,
kids like as the plan.
sure.
Thankful because of kids. I'm at where I'm at now and stayed more centralized to their family. And they also go on to say, I also know without kids, I would have went military full time and pursued that career, and most likely would not be living in California. And then they add on, I feel so many people are worried about a legacy, like quote legacy, but if you have nothing to pass on, what legacy are you passing on? So that was one response.
That's real. And so can I interrupt you real quick?
Mhm.
Um, that's a very real. I appreciate that answer, whoever that is, because I
Yeah,
think that legacy thing is huge. Because I think there's a lot of people that want to focus on. I want to leave a legacy behind through my kids, through my family. But I think again, the reality of life is for some people that legacy is not a necessarily a good one, right? Like the way you grew up, your family, grandparents, parents, there might be a lot of pain that kind of comes through that line. And so for some people, I think there's some people that don't want to have kids because they want to kind of put an end
yeah,
to that continuation of that pain. And so
Yeah.
that's a very real thing. Like I think there's one side that's like legacy, the great thing, but if you feel like, that's not necessarily a good thing for your specific family, then that's not a bad thing to say, like, you know what, we're just going to stop it here. I'm not going to have kids because I can't keep passing this along.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And then another response. This one is really long. I'm going to shorten it for them, just kind of sum it up, and I hope that's okay. Um, so this person said, "It's not that I don't want kids, but I felt like I already went through a pseudo experience of having kids by raising both my sisters, 7 and 8 year age difference." And then they go on to say that it was kind of like watching a physically abusive household, parents divorced when this person was 15, how this person would walk, their sisters to and from school and just kind of like be at all their sporting events and kind of coach them up and kind of basically stepping in as a parent. And then they say, obviously, it's different when it's your own child, but I don't know if I want to endure that again. I wasn't asked to do all of those things. I did it so my sister could experience something I couldn't without being raised with fear and abuse. So to sum up, the fear of becoming abusive, like my father, resonated for a long time, while along with my responsibilities I took in my adolescent years factored a lot in having children or not. I don't know if that made sense, but
Hmm.
so taking on a person, so there's that too. I mean, there are some experiences that you go through that and you're like, I don't want to do that, like, and but on the flip side, you have some people who are like, no, I'm going to have kids because I don't want to be like that. But this person specifically went through those things and they're like, I'm cool, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't mean to keep chiming in each time you
Yep.
read something, but, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Like with like that lineage of pain, right. And hurt. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people, it's like, yeah, you've experienced that through your family, and the idea and the fear of potentially passing that on or becoming that thing is a real thing.
Yeah.
And in that person's situation, raising, kind of becoming the stand-in parent at an early age, you kind of do things in reverse, right? So some
Mm-hmm.
of your younger years are dedicated to, in a way, raising your siblings, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly challenging. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. And so, yeah, you get to a certain point when that's no longer your responsibility. It's almost like a newfound freedom, right? And
Yeah.
it's like you've kind of done that other thing. Let me live life, and let me not. Let me try to live life without that specific burden. Not saying their siblings are a burden, but the responsibility of taking care of them at a young
Mhm.
age is definitely a burden.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And here's the thing too, with people, because you had mentioned it, like there's people that would want to have kids with the intention of breaking the cycle, right?
Mhm.
Of whatever hurt or pain is in their family. But even that, like it's an incredibly heavy task to take on. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like you have kids and all of a sudden those things that you're bringing into it and that you're trying to break away from are just going to go away because you have kids. That's just always present. So I'm sure that some people have had to go through therapy, counseling, all those different things to help break that cycle. So it's not just having kids, but then you're also taking on this responsibility of, for lack of a better term, like healing yourself along the way as well, to
Mhm.
ensure that you're a really good parent and not you don't follow down the same footsteps. So that's a big task. So shout out to people who do that and who have that intention, but like that is a really big thing to take on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So these are some deep things,
Hmm.
things going on here. And then another person said, this one's kind of long too. I don't know how to shorten this one, so I'm just going to try to say it quickly.
You're good.
So they said, okay, so for me, I always pictured myself having kids when I was growing up. Always pictured myself as a mom and what I would do and how I would be. Now that I have kids and meeting her now husband, I realize I would have been better off just being an auntie. I love my kids and I'm glad my husband talked me into not having any more children. This is a husband that she married and they both have kids separately, so they don't have kids together,
Okay.
by the way.
Okay.
Um, she goes on to say, for example, we love taking our kids places and going to do things, but the whole time I'm thinking this shit costs so much money and these kids don't even look like they're having fun. But I can take my nieces or nephews somewhere and have so much more fun with them and spend all sorts of money on them without a care in the world. I would have been better off as Deb being the rich auntie, which I'm not rich, y'all. I just like calling myself, I just like calling the hat rich aunt hat, Deb,
We
whatever.
don't believe you, but that's fine.
And she goes on to say, I joke that I love my nieces and nephews more than my own kids, but it's a different type of love because I don't have to live with them or take care of them on a daily basis. Financially, in this day and time, it does not make sense to have children. The cost of raising kids now is significantly higher than what it was 15 to 30 plus years ago. So, so there, that was an interesting perspective. And again, this person loves her kids, obviously, but
Sure.
she's kind of like, oh, if I could go back in time type situation, I guess. And again, any answer is, if we don't judge you, I think every answer is the right answer because you get to feel what you want to feel for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And just so everybody knows too, this is, and hopefully this just goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyways. These are the kind of things too that like you kept that anonymous. This stays anonymous, and this is not something that Deb and I talk about off air either. You know what I mean? It's like, who said that? Don't care. So
Yeah.
as long as that should just give everybody a little extra
Yeah.
peace and comfort. Like when Deb says it's anonymous, that's 100% anonymous, even behind the behind the scenes when the recording is done.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then here's another one. So this person says, even from a young age in high school, I didn't want kids. I found my letter to me in 10 years that you write your senior year in high school. And it literally says right now at age 18, you don't want kids. Has that changed? Gosh, I hope not. There are a lot of women who want to have babies because it's something they should do in quotations, or a stage they'll quotations change their mind about when they're older. There was a time at 32 when I did some soul searching if it was something that I needed. But then I realized I don't need it to be fulfilled in who I am as a woman, partner, daughter, lover, and friend. And the fact that many women do still feel the need to be because some mom/old lady out there says they'll regret it, not because they themselves feel that way, is sad and frankly bullshit. You choose your path, and I chose mine. It doesn't make it wrong or right, simply my path, and that's okay. I have more love and laughs in my life than many people will ever have, and I'm happy with that. If I were to get pregnant tomorrow, would I give it up? No. But does that mean I'm actively trying? Double no. It's important to me, though, that I always check back in with myself and my partner every little while because it's so important to have these conversations on a regular basis. My partner and I have had many conversations about it throughout our almost 15 years together, and we always come back to it's not for us, but should that change for either one of us, we know we have to talk about it as a team. I guess I've just never seen myself as a mother. Although I do see myself as a caretaker at heart, I find other ways to nurture the people around me that makes my heart feel good, including nieces and nephews that I love dearly. So I thought that that was a interesting response into
Yeah,
not having
great.
kids. I resonate with that response a lot as well, like a lot of the things that person said in terms of like being a caretaker. Like I'm a teacher and I feel like all of my nurturing and mothering comes out in that way and in my friendships and stuff. So I thought that that was a really really good response. Okay, so those were, I have a couple. Okay, hang on. So here's another one. Those were the longest ones, so I'll go through the other ones quickly.
No, you're good.
So someone else said, okay, this is kind of tough to answer for me because it was never, in all caps, a question for me. I knew I wanted to be a mama for as long as I can remember, and luckily I was able to get pregnant and have my beautiful babies with no complications or difficulties, a blessing I never take for granted. I truly feel that a person needs to want, in all caps, parenthood because it involves so much sacrifice, in all caps, if you're doing it right, in quotations. The love and connection is divine, so the sacrifice has always been worth it for me. So that was a sweet response from
Nice.
someone.
Very good.
Another one, yeah. Another one is, this is a tough one for me too because God didn't give me the ability to have children that I always wanted. But what he did instead is give me an opportunity to raise other people's children, which has been very rewarding, but hard at times. So I don't, oh, sorry. So I don't think I'm much help. Because I texted someone about like, hey, like what? Oh, hard at times. So I don't think I'm much help. Oh, they don't think they're much help. I actually just read this one. I hadn't read this before. This one just came in. I see what they're trying to say. It's
Sure.
hard. So I don't think that they're helpful. But that's a good one too, because there are, I mean, some people can't have kids. Like
Yeah.
it breaks my heart. But I'm glad some people might find other ways of giving. That's a tough one when you want kids and you can't have them.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that. Thank you for sharing that one, because I think that is important. Kind of a deviation from what we've been talking about. And that's what I would say too, because I feel like I saw something a while ago. There was a couple, I think maybe on Facebook, that they kind of got some. They went a little bit viral because they did like this fake baby announcement, but they were basically announcing that they don't want kids and they're happy not having kids. Right. Here's the thing. I don't think it was nearly as funny as they thought it was, but they're entitled to do that. But it was interesting. Some of the comments, the article is basically how this got kind of polar opposite responses. And some people were like, good for you, you shouldn't feel the pressure. But then there were some people that felt offended because they were in a situation where they were unable to,
Yeah.
or they were struggling with it in that moment. And so, that is something I think everybody should probably keep in mind when you're having those conversations. You don't know what everybody's situation is. And so the reality is there are some people in that situation where it's either incredibly difficult or it was not able to happen. And so
Yeah.
just keep that in mind when you're having those conversations too, because that's got to be tough.
It's so hard because you do want to be able to express to the world freely, hey, I don't want kids. We're
Mm-hmm.
not having them. I don't want them. But it's hard, it's hard to be, but then you have those people who are like, I would freaking die. Like, I want kids so bad. And I've experienced it secondhand with my sister in her first pregnancy, and she lost
Sure.
her baby. And then she had a hard time getting pregnant the second time around and almost lost that one. Like, she was devastated. So I saw that side of just how heartbroken she was. So from that, I have learned to be careful with how you ask people questions if you don't know them.
Sure. Sure.
I never ask anyone, do you want kids? Do you want more kids? Like, I never, nope. I'll let them tell me if they want, but like,
That's smart.
that could be such a triggering question for some people.
Yeah, for sure.
You just don't know what they've been through and if it's going to hurt them. But
Mm-hmm.
okay. Sorry, I lied. I have one more long one and then the rest are short.
No, you're
Okay.
good. Not a problem.
This person says, I have so much to say on this, but I feel like my overall thing is that kids are way more permanent than marriage. So, whoever you're deciding to have children with, you need to have that super hard conversation that's a little awkward, where you talk about what your parenting looks like or what you see yourself having it look like if things don't work out. And that doesn't mean you're unhappy in your relationship or marriage. It just means that you want to know or have an idea of what that human would be willing to do or not do when it comes to parenting a separation or divorce.
Hmm.
Another thing that I have is that I am a single mom, but I always wanted to be a one and done. And the reason for that being is for the longest time I was on the no kid train, like no kids. But I also knew that there was a part of me that felt like I would miss out if I didn't have kids. So having only one, truly, it didn't alter my life all that much. In the beginning or early ages of your child, oh, for sure changes a lot. But as the older they get, like, you have a little ride or die. Sorry, some of these are typos, and I'm trying to figure out how to.
I dealt with the same thing on
The
my
older
end.
they
It's
get,
tough.
it's okay. She says the older they get, it's like having a little ride or die, like a little mini you, is what she's trying to say. That does everything in life with you, and it's fucking awesome. So I appreciate that perspective as well on just having that hard conversation with yourself and your partner. And what if you split up one day and you're divorced and now you're a single parent? So I feel like all of these responses have touched on almost not quite every situation, obviously, but a lot of different situations that
Sure.
are just good to keep in mind. Okay, so some short answer ones. I'm pretty sure that the long ones are over. Someone said, yes, on kids, the best thing I ever did. They are my joy. And then someone said, again, yes, best thing ever. Someone said it adds joy, purpose, and I wish I would have had two instead of just one. And then, sorry, I got to switch to Instagram. I have them on different things. Okay. And then here comes absolutely not on
Okay.
having kids.
Here you go.
And on the why is financial responsibility. And what if they start killing puppies?
Well, maybe that's one thought. That's a good,
watch,
sure.
watch, Watching too much true crime there, right
Yeah, you
there.
don't want to end up on a documentary. I get that. As the poor parent who has to, it's like, I never saw this coming. You don't want to be there.
And then someone said kids, ew.
There you go. I keep it pretty
And
simple.
someone responded, who I'm not going to say who it is, but this person has 4 kids, They said, hell no, they're so expensive and such assholes. And I was like, you have 4 kids. What are you talking about?
Well, there you go. Hey, that's
So
one
I
way to
guess
look at it.
he would know. And then someone said, be fruitful and multiply, quoting the Bible, but it's also not biblically wrong to choose no. So, it sounds like that's, their reason for wanting to have kids.
Sure.
Um, uh, let's see. And then someone said, but your quotation, I just got this one in too, so I'm trying to decipher it.
Nice. You guys are
Um,
getting him at the last second.
yeah. Sub question below. Kid is just one or more, but your one child needs a sibling. I'm not sure what that means. I'll have to ask them what that means. But
Yeah.
anyway, so those are
This
some.
podcast isn't smart enough for that one.
I didn't have time. I'll respond and be like, "Can you explain more?" So I
Sure.
can talk about it.
Sure.
But I just got that one in. Um, so anyway, I think I got all of them. I
Perfect.
loved those responses. I thought they were great. So thank you to everyone who, whether it was a short response or they poured their heart into sending me a dissertation. I loved it. So
Yeah.
I think it's just good. I think it's just an interesting topic to talk about, and I think some people feel judged maybe for, again, if someone is saying yes, you should have kids, and this is why, or I think the people who don't want kids feel offended or judged or whatever, and then vice versa. So, but I think everyone gets to do what they want to do, and I think that's okay. But I loved that everyone was respectful in their responses and just saying their own personal
Sure.
thing, and
Sure.
I didn't get the notion that anyone's imposing anything on anyone. So thank you to everyone who responded. We appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. No, we always appreciate the responses, and yeah, that makes episodes like this even better because obviously we want to connect with you guys. We want you guys to be able to connect with what we're talking about, and so this is a great way of doing it. So good call on the topic, Deb, and I think it was a good one for sure.
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, and so hopefully, as you mentioned, hopefully this was something. This is a lot. I'll say this was a lot deeper. We waded into the deeper waters today, which is
Right.
not always common on this podcast. I think Deb even mentioned she's like, this is kind of a not here to judge topic. If you're
Mm-hmm.
unfamiliar with Not Here to Judge, it's a podcast years ago that Deb used to do years ago.
It reminds me of the meme, the Titanic old lady. It's been 84 years. It's been 80 something years.
Deb had a really good podcast that
Like
she
it's
did on
been
her
that long.
own, and since then it's been. I'll do it again one day. We'll see. We'll see if Deb actually gets around to it. But yeah, so thank you for listening to this episode with that specific topic, and I think hopefully it was helpful for people. It was either an interesting perspective that you had never heard of or thought of, or like you said, Deb, it just made you feel heard. I think is what you said at the very beginning of this recording. So
Yeah.
hopefully it was in some way, shape, or form helpful for everybody, or at least interesting. And if not, then check out one of our other episodes where we talk about a top 5 people we would bring on a heist with us. We've got those episodes too. And so yeah, it was a good episode. So Deb, where can they follow us on social media?
Yeah, you guys can follow us on Twitter at Connectable Pod and on all other platforms at Connectable Podcast, such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok.
Yep. All those places. And then please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you use. We should be on there. If not, let us know. We'll try to figure it out. Also, like Deb said, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see our faces while we're talking about all these different things. And if you would be so kind, please head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to give us a 5-star rating and review. We would definitely appreciate that. It helps us be more visible to people who are searching for podcasts. So we would definitely appreciate that if you'd be willing to take the time to do so. And then if you have a friend that's looking for a new podcast, send them this one. We would appreciate it. And hopefully they enjoy it. Just make it seem like it's really good. Like I said last episode, they're going to find their way to the big dogs anyways in podcasting if they're new to podcasts. Start here with us, and then if they want to go on to Rogan or whoever, then that's perfect. But let them know about our podcast. And so that's all we got, Deb. So there we go. I think coming up, we're gonna have like a whole string of guests. So you guys won't have to listen to just the two of us. We're gonna have a bunch of guests coming up pretty soon here if everything works out. So stay tuned for more episodes coming up. We're on our way to 200. which is very exciting. Got some fun stuff in store for that. And yeah, there we go.
That's it.
I'm done.
All right.
All right, I'm
Have a
gonna go
good
hang out with my kids I was talking about. So see ya. See ya. What's going on, guys? Hopefully you enjoyed this episode about having kids or not having kids. We had a good time recording it. Obviously, we had a ton of amazing responses, like you just heard. And once we stopped recording, we got a bunch more responses from people who had things to say about why they love being a parent. And so normally we just say, hey, we got your response. Maybe next time, we're not going to add it in. But I got, I think, 8 responses, 7 or 8 responses afterwards. I'm like, well, if I get that many, I've got to just tack on a little piece at the end here to just give a shout out to the people who were kind enough to respond. So I'm just going to run through them really quick. And yeah, we thought it'd be a fun way to kind of just add on, to this episode. So Nicole, our friend Nicole Scott, says watching them become the most amazing adults. And I don't know if I already said this. This is for all of these are for the question, what do you love about being a parent? I know we put out a couple questions, but all of these are for that specific question. So, anyways, Nicole Scott, our friend Nicole Scott, says watching them become the most amazing adults. And I think I think Nicole, I think you also put a response to a different question saying, can I give them back? So that gave me a little chuckle when I saw that, and that felt like a perfect response coming from you as well. So I enjoyed that a lot. But this response was great. My mom. Obviously, I have 2 younger kids, and so I don't know that feeling yet. But I've definitely heard my mom, who has at this point all grown adult children. She said the same thing, and she's talked about that how amazing that process is, how much it sucks at times because it's a reflection or it's a gauge on watching the time go by, but at the same time it's pretty cool, she said. So and I'm sure there's a lot of parents that share in that thought as well. So thank you, Nicole, for responding to that. Our friend Gabe Lemon, who's an amazing athletic trainer here in Sacramento, he says walking through the door and them running up to me. Again, I know Gabe's got some younger kids, and man, I'd have to agree. Nothing better than having your kids hearing "Daddy" when you walk through the door and just giving them massive hugs. Your arms are full of stuff. You have your backpack, you have your bags, and they couldn't care any less. And they just give you that massive hug and that scream of joy when you walk through the door. There is nothing better. So, thank you, Gabe, for the response. Our friend Cedric, who's been a guest multiple times on the show, he says seeing them genuinely happy. And again, I think I'm gonna agree with all these things that everybody shared. But man, Cedric, I completely agree with that too. Especially when it's that unhindered joy that only a kid can have, right? There's that thing where they have no stress, no worry, no fear. They just are genuinely happy living in the moment. And as a parent, if you have any kind of hand in that, if you're doing something that's providing that joy for them, or if you're just sitting back and watching them just be joyful and genuinely happy, it's pretty incredible. So I thought that was amazing. I love that. And let's see, we got Coach Z, Coach Alex Zavala. He says being a father is amazing. Coach kept it short and simple, and I agree with that too, man. It is really the best. And I know we spent a lot of time in this episode, I think, talking about people's decision not to have kids and why that's okay. I probably didn't do a good enough job sharing it from the parent side, because I was asking questions and talking about some different thoughts that people shared. But man, for me and my wife, having kids was what we wanted to do. We have 2 kids and we love it. It's crazy. It's stressful sometimes. It gets tiring at moments, but at the end of the day, there's not been one time that I've ever thought, that we made a bad choice, or that kids are too difficult. It's the best for us. I want to make that clear. It's the best for us. We love it, and we've had an incredible time despite the craziness. So, and it's just one of the best feelings being a dad and having the opportunity to raise these little people, similar to like what Nicole said, watching them grow up. Like I said, they're not adults yet, but just the fact that I can watch them grow up at the ages they are is pretty special. So I agree, man. Being a father is amazing. And oh, I'm sorry, Coach also had another part saying his favorite part is just being a parent in general. Love being a girl dad, and then he said being a father is amazing. So yeah, I agree with all that, Coach. And then, we got another coach. We got a couple coaches in the comments this time. Uh, our friend Coach Norman over at Laguna Creek High School. Uh, he's a basketball coach again. He took a little break, and I didn't think he was coming back to it, and then he changed his mind and he came back to it. So excited to see the awesome things you're going to be doing this year, Coach. But you said I can't give you my favorite, but the worst time. It goes by so fast, and then he has the crying emoji, dude. It's it. I 100% agree. One of the best parts are all these things that people have mentioned: walking through the door, seeing them happy, watching them grow up. It's all great, but the time, man, sucks because they are a barometer of how fast time goes by. And yeah, I'll tell you this, man. At our house, it's always emotional as these different milestones hit. Starting school for the first time, and all these walking when they're little, and talking, all these different things, man. It's we're just a mess over here at the Takimoto household because of just how quickly the time goes by. And so I would just encourage anybody, if you have kids, even if you don't, but specifically we're talking about who has kids right now, make use of that time. Don't take any of that time for granted, because I've always said it might be difficult, it might be challenging, life might be crazy with your kids, but the worst feeling is looking back at life or looking back at moments and then realizing that you missed an opportunity, or the fact that you weren't there and fully present when you should have been, because you can't go back and change it. There's always going to be different challenges, there's always going to be different stresses, but the one thing you cannot change is you cannot go back and change time. And so I think the more we're aware of that in the moment, the better we'll be. And I think the more we'll enjoy those moments. It's difficult for sure, but I think we got to be present. So, Coach, I'm with you. Time sucks. Watching that time fly by sucks. We got two more here. I'm sorry, one more. Sorry, my phone's acting up. I'm trying to get to my note. There we go. We've got one from Sarah Schwinn, aka Deb's sister. And she said, watching my kiddo grow and learn and having little adventures. And that's great. Like we just said, growing, learning, watching them develop is amazing. But I really like that little adventures thing, because that's so huge. I think I talked about this a little bit when it came to imagination in our imagination episode, how these little adventures for us, or for our families, for them, for our kids, are huge. It's funny. I remember taking, not so much anymore, but like back in the day when you first start taking your kids to the grocery store and they start realizing that they're in this place where there's food everywhere, and there's shopping carts and there's all this different stuff, right? It's like a huge adventure for them. For us, it's like, dang, we gotta go to the grocery store. I hate this trip. But for them, it's this massive adventure. And the way they see the world with their messes and their toys and their imagination, uh, all of these little things that we kind of take for granted, that's just a part of regular everyday adult life, for them are adventures. They're learning and seeing these things for the first time and experiencing it in new ways. And then you take them to a theme park, you take them to a park, or you take them to the lake or the ocean. All these things are they're things they experience for the first time, and these are little adventures to us, big adventures to them. And so I love the fact that you put that in your response as well, because I think those are so important, and they're also just a lot of fun to have with your kids. And Sarah, you and I have never spoken, we've never met, but if you ever have any crazy stories about our friend, my co-host, Crazy Aunt Deb, please let me know. I would love to share it on the podcast. You don't have to let her know that I added this at the end of the podcast. You can just send me some stories, and I would love to share them on the podcast, because I imagine she's a pretty good aunt, but I don't say crazy Aunt Deb lightly. I believe she's probably a crazy aunt. So, and I feel like she doesn't really share too many of those things. So if you've got any good stuff to share with us, Sarah, let me know. Let me know. So anyways, that's all I got. Like I said, I wanted to share those responses because I thought they were really good. And all that being said, yeah, we'll see you guys next week. All right. See ya. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.